Good morning, fellow South Africans. Good morning. Welcome to the SACCO podcast. We said we are going to dedicate the month of July to economy, the economy of South Africa, where we are going. And let us start to analyze and dissect where we are so that we can be able to come up with solutions of how we can turn this wheel, put the dead bricks and turn this wheel around. As we all know, that every year there's World Economic Forum that is being held in Davos in Switzerland. And all head of states, all your majesties, kings and queens, celebrities, media, and internet influencers actually attend this meeting in Davos. And let us look at who is the founder of the World Economic Forum. The founder of World Economic Forum is Professor Klaus Schwab, who was born in 1938 in Germany, Nazi Germany. His father was Eugene Schwab, who was the director of a company that is called Rosenberg. This company used slave laborers to manufacture weapons of war. Later, Klaus Schwab became a member of the board of directors of the very same company, Rosenberg, which later was given the title of National Specialist Model Company. Roosevelt played a key role in the production and the development of the weapons, military weapons in South Africa. So it tells you that South Africa, during the apartheid regime, already the founder and the chairman of the World Economic Forum already had close relationships with South Africa, because he was one of the board members of a company in Germany that was producing military weapons for the apartheid regime in South Africa. I'd like you, as you are listening to this podcast, you must compare what is happening, because we need to make sense of where we are so that we can open up our eyes and really see what is happening. Now, that is the owner of the World Forum. In 2014, the very same Professor Schwab wrote a book which he called, in 2014, he actually introduced and said, we need to have a system that is going to create a reset. Economic reset. That was in 2014. This is another thing that I would like us to look at. This was declared at the World Economic Forum in 2014. This is the same period where the current President Cyril Ramaphosa was the deputy president. He was the deputy president from 2014 to 2019. Deputy president of the country. And question may come that we need to ask is that, how come President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was in the private sector, he was there when Nelson Mandela got out in 1991, he held his hand. But when former President Mbeki became the president, he left politics and went to private sector, right? And then he came back in 2014. And when he came back, he didn't start at the bottom. He came back as a deputy president of the country. Question is, and at that time, it was President Zuma. Former President Zuma was the president at that time. So the current president at that time in 2014 was a deputy of former President Jacob Zuma. Now, let's look at this. At the same time, in 2014, there was an advocate of the National Development Plan of 2030. I would ask you to go back and revisit the National Development Plan of 2030. Now, at the World Economic Forum, they also have a plan that by 2030, their plan should be finalized and fully operational. Now, look at the coincidence there. And remember, in life there is no coincidence. Even mathematics says coincidence, it's angles that coincide. So there is nothing like a coincidence. So let's draw the map here. So South Africa is talking about the National Development Plan in 2014. South Africa brings in a deputy president as Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. The World Economic Forum is talking about the World Plan of 2030. Right. That is 2014. Now, let us look at what happens after that. This is called revolution. In business, we have a concept that we call constructive disruption. Constructive disruption means that you destroy everything. You destroy everything and bring it to the ground so that you can rebuild again. It's called constructive destruction. In the devil's language, it was called revolution, not constructive destruction. It's called revolution. Now, the chairman of the World Economic Forum talks about the Great Reset in 2014, right? And then he writes a book called The Greatest Reset. See, are you following where I'm going? Now, in his book, he talks about this great reset. Let us look at what happens in South Africa in 2016. Remember, in 2014, it was the reintroduction of President Cyril Ramaphosa, by then the deputy president, the launch of this great reset. And then in 2016, South Africa embarks on a massive implementation of the internet fiber. And they call it the fiber revolution. Now, the language in Davos is that a master of technology will be the master of the world. That is the language of Davos. Now in 2016, South Africa starts rolling out fiber, internet fiber, so that we can be able to accommodate the technology that is coming. Now, in his word, the chairman of the World Economic Forum, he says, the revolution is not between human beings and robots, which is what we thought, that the robots are going to be taking over jobs and there will be high unemployment. He says, no, that's not the case. The revolution is not between people and robots. The revolution, it's about the reset. Let us talk about what is this reset that they're talking about. And remember, our leaders go to this conference every year without fail. And this is what is being discussed there. And I'd like us to come back and take it here home. They discuss in Davos, implementation happens in different countries. Now, like I said, the language in Davos is a master of technology will be the master of the world. And the language again says, science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not intelligent design by God above, but our design of our clouds, like the IBM clouds, the Microsoft clouds. These are the new driving forces of evolution. They declare at Davos that today we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. If you have enough data, meaning if you have enough information and enough power, you can understand people better than they can understand themselves. Then you are in a position to can manipulate them in ways that were impossible before technology. Now, this is what it is, the mode of operandus. This is how they're going to operate, by controlling the masses. Now, how are they going to do this? And remember, Davos is talking about collecting data. This collection of data, it is what is going to make them to have enough information about us so that they can control us in a massive scale. Okay? Now, how are they going to collect this data? Now, what happens is, first of all, there is what we call mass information, mass formation. Now, what is mass formation? Mass formation is a situation where you get people to start thinking in a particular mass way. How do you get people to do that? When a lot of people feel lonely and you tap into their psychological warfare and you create chronic fear. So chronic fear plus isolation results in emotional pain. Now, when people are undergoing emotional pain, they would listen to anything that anybody says will help them to alleviate the pain that they're feeling. We had a level 5 lockdown. The level 5 lockdown was isolating people. It was people were experiencing chronic fear because the media was bombarding people with the fear. Stats were manipulated. Everything was actually, it was increased. I forgot the name. How, the word will come. But when you exaggerate it, everything was exaggerated so that people can live in this chronic fear. And remember, in South Africa, we were isolated for the first 21 days in March, and then it was extended. So, worst of all, the army was called to come and guard the community to make sure that people do not go on the streets. It's a very funny thing. I always ask this question. I think it was in 2022, you may correct me when we discuss these issues. I think it was in 2022 when the country was a bit unstable, national security didn't come in, when there was xenophobia and on the social media, the foreign nationals were bringing in weapons to say they're going to fight the South Africans. It was when this thing here, Dudula, was really rife. And the foreigners were saying they're going to fight back, and they were showing their ammunition and everything. And I kept on asking a question, which is the same question that I'm asking about the government buildings that have been taken over by foreigners. Government buildings, I'm talking clinics. If you are in Johannesburg, CBD, go and look at Carlton Center today. Carlton Center used to be the economic hub of Johannesburg. When you were in Carlton Center, you were in the place in Johannesburg. Carlton Center has been taken over. These are government buildings. The question that I've always asked is that, why is it that when we had to be closed in at level 5 lockdown, the army was called in? But our government is not calling the army to protect its own properties, government buildings, from the foreigners. When the national security, right? When national security is threatened by xenophobia, why is our government not calling the army? They're calling the army for us to say stay in the house, it's level 5. But serious economic issues, they're not calling in the army. Now it tells you and it shows you that there is a mandate here that our government is pushing. Question is, could it be the devil's mandate? This devils that they go to every year? That is, I had said we need to start interrogating ourselves and asking these difficult questions. As we can see that we do not have opposition in South Africa. We don't have opposition. I'm sure you are aware by the quietness of our opposition parties with the ruling that came out of Phala-Phala. The ruling said President Cyril Ramaphosa has done nothing wrong. You know, it's his business, it's his money, there is nothing wrong that he did. He didn't do anything wrong by evading tax. He didn't do anything wrong by bringing in the money into the country illegally. He didn't do anything wrong. And our opposition parties are quiet. Nobody's lifting a finger. Now that tells us we don't have an opposition in the country. We don't. Because if we did, the oppositions now would be opposing the public protector's findings. But they're not. Quiet. Phala-Phala issue's gone down the drain. We're talking economics. We're talking economics. Now, we were put into that situation of chronic fear and isolation. Now what happens? People started believing in whatever solution that is going to come up. There were free tests that were being brought into the country. Because remember, the mandate is collect data. Now they were taking our specimens to the laboratories. They were doing whatever testing that we don't know. The issue here is to manipulate us. So if they get any trace of the medical people will tell better in this regard that if you have my specimen of my fluids in my body, which they were taking it in our nostrils and down our throats, what is it that you can get? I'm not a medical person. I can't get into that. But my logic says those tests that we were doing were helping them to gather data, information about us. Because remember, the issue is that whoever has information, enough information and enough power can master the world. We were happy with free testing. Little did we know that this free testing, what is the bigger picture, what's happening here with this free testing. Then came the issue of the vaccination. We were forced to be vaccinated. There were incentives that were given for people to vaccinate. People used to get vouchers for them to be vaccinated. And the question there is, vaccination. If they're saying vaccination is to help us, to protect us from getting the virus, if I choose not to be vaccinated, I'm actually at the risk of getting the virus. You who is vaccinated, you're not at risk. Even if I can be in the same room with you, because you are vaccinated, the vaccine is going to protect you. The virus will never come into you. But why were they forcing people to be vaccinated? Why were they giving people incentives to be vaccinated? Question that we must ask is that, what is it that is in these vaccines? In light of what we understand, the agenda of Davos by 2030, and we are now in 2020, 2021, the massive vaccine thing was mainly in 2021, it was vaccine all the way. Now that 9 years before the 2030 cutoff line. Can we start to now relate to what is happening here? Are we able to put in the dots and say, is this what is happening to us as a country? Have we been sold to the Davos mandate? Because you can actually see the correlation. When you look at the dates, you can actually see that these days correspond to this dates correspond to this, questions that we need to ask. Now here's a burning issue. One of the critical downside of this control mechanism is to control us financially. If you look at it now, there's very few people that owns properties. Properties and land are being taken by the corporates. Corporate companies would buy private houses and turn them into offices. They take off the land. So the majority are left without property or any estates. And remember, most of our money and our security comes from our land. When you have the land, you are able to create wealth out of your land. So the land is being stripped off from us. Properties are being stripped off from us. Interest rates are increasing. Food prices are increasing. Last week, in our last episode, I was talking and making an example of a young couple that has just started a life. They have small kids that go to school. They work in corporate South Africa. They have 2 cars which are hire purchase. They have a house which is a bond. Now the interest of both the cars and the house is going up. The school fees, it's going up. The food is going up. The fuel is going up. How is this couple going to cope? Chances are salary is not going up. Chances are they're not coping. So as a society, psychologically, we are being pushed to a position where we are going to be left isolated. Now, the isolation is economical. You look at the laws that they're doing now. And this revolution is going to happen with our children. Look at the current Bella Act that is being debated. The Bella Act actually strips the power of the parent and gives the power to the government. The Bella Act. The Bella Act is getting rid of governing bodies in the school systems. Who is the governing body? Governing body is parents of the children that are in that school. So if the Bella Act is taking out the governing bodies, it's taking out parents out of the schools. Now the family structure is being destroyed. How is the family structure being destroyed? First of all, a lot of jobs were lost. You are sitting with a father that is unemployed because he lost his job. You are sitting with a mother that is working 3 jobs to make ends meet. A mother that is dependent on the governing body because a member of the governing body is the neighbor. So she's relying on the neighbor to make sure that the school is run properly because she's not there. She's running 3 jobs. Now, here's a child that's sitting with a father that is unemployed and a mother that is absent and a mother, a neighbor. Remember, a child, who community, you know, that's us. Now, this mother next door has been stripped of the right to be able to intervene when this mother is not at home with the children by the Bella Act, because she would do that through the governing body, through the school, to correct behavior. Right? Psychologically, that family is already destroyed because the father cannot talk to the child. The child has the rights. They can take the father to jail. Remember, jail time has been increased with the Bella Act. It used to be 6 months. Now it's 12 months. Now this child can take the father to jail. She's got the right to do that. What happens to that family structure? And the system, the devil, I'm going to call it the devil's system. The devil's system, part of its design is to collapse the family unit so that they can capture our children, so that they can teach them their own propaganda through the schooling system. We are seeing that in South Africa with the Bella Act. alcohol can be sold in our schools. This is scientifically proven. There's a nerve in your brain. The medical people can attest to this. I'm inviting them in this debate. There's a nerve in your brain. When alcohol, a thinking nerve, it's a thinking nerve in your brain. When alcohol is introduced into that nerve sleeps. That is why you find most of the antidepressants, flu medications, they have a little bit of alcohol in them. The purpose for that alcohol is to make the thinking nerve to fall asleep so that you don't think, so that you recover. Now, school is a place of education where your thinking nerve should be up to its maximum capacity. Now, if alcohol is making the thinking nerve sleep, and alcohol is sold in our schools, literally, we are saying the thinking nerve for our children should sleep. How are they going to learn when the thinking nerve is sleeping? What information is going to be put into their subconscious minds while the thinking nerve is sleeping? Remember, the subconscious mind never sleeps. The conscious mind is the one that sleeps. The subconscious doesn't sleep. So while the conscious mind is sleeping, you can put in information at the subconscious level. And we wonder why our children are totally different from the way we were when we were kids at that age. Not everything about the apartheid regime was bad. There were good things there that we need to take and say, this was a good thing. Let's improve on it. The good thing about the apartheid regime was that South Africa was protected. We didn't have all of these foreigners coming into our country, false preachers. All of these things that are happening now were not happening because we were closed in. As a South African, if you've traveled, it would be Lesotho, Botswana, Swaziland, or Mozambique, and if you have family there. So I'm sure even today, if we can do a research, even today, the majority of South Africans don't have passports. And those that have passports, if you look at their passports, it's only stamped Lesotho. If Kim Soto like myself, Swaziland, if he's from Swaziland, Botswana, these neighboring countries, sub-Saharan. That is how enclosed we were. And that was protection. I'm not advocating for apartheid. I'm not advocating for enclosure of people. But I'm just saying, let us have an open mind. Let us relook some of these things that are happening. Let us look at the psychological impact that the economic situation of South Africa is having on us now. Right now, we are living under fear. They introduced a fear of Third World War just because Russia and Ukraine are fighting. It's now a World War III. And they bring all this fear that World War III is coming. They bring all this fear of a total shutdown. Yeah, Eskom. Last I was talking about Eskom to say, why are we having load shedding now? Why are we being threatened by this total shutdown? And they create all this thing that when total shutdown comes, our phones won't be working, alarm systems won't be working, criminals will go into shops and steal, people will come into your house, we must go buy fuel. There's this fear that is being put to us. Why are we being led by fear? That is the question that I'm going to leave everyone with today. Why are we being put in a position where we must be scared to live? Are we saying that God is not great? Are we saying God cannot deliver us? Are we saying a human being that was created by God can have the power over us? Remember who you are. You are God's creation. That's who you are. You are God's creation. And if God can take care of the birds on the tree, why do you think that God cannot take care of you? And remember, where there is fear, there is no love. Fear and love are the opposites. Where there is fear, there is no love. God is love. Therefore, if God is love, and in your life you are led by fear, it means that you do not have God in your presence. Because fear and love cannot exist at the same time. It's like dark and light. If you walk into a dark room and you switch on the light, that darkness disappears immediately. Because dark and light can never exist in the same place. I'm going to conclude today's podcast by saying, go back and do an introspection in your lives and ask yourself, is your life where you are today being led by fear or love? And if the answer is fear, then you must know that there is no God in your life. And start searching for the face of God. Start going back to the drawing board and creating a relationship with God. Because the only thing that is going to help us in this situation is God. Because He is the creator of all of us. Devils can say that the evolution is not the evolution of God, is the evolution of technology. They can come with that. But we know that is not true. Another fact that this is a fact that I want to leave behind as I close off today's podcast. The media has created an impression that the people that still believes in God and believe that we can win this fight are in a minority. What they do is they televise all these fear things, the load shedding, the protest, the everything that creates fear. Now you think that there's a lot of people that have attended this march. Yeah, load shedding, COSATU and everything. Now you're thinking there's a lot of people that are supporting this load shedding fear thing, right? Because the media portrays it like that. And you're thinking that on the other side, let me say black and white. On the black side, there's a lot of people, there's media vibe, there's marches, there's TikToks, there's all of this noise that is being done by social media and mainstream media. And on the white side, there's quietness. So it seems as if the people on the white side are a few because there's quietness on the side. Now you are in the middle. You don't know where you're standing. Now, the impression that you have in your mind is that the majority is on the black side. so might as well go on the black side. That is not true. That is not true. The majority is in the middle. The majority is in the middle. The black has minority. The white has minority. Here in the middle, that's where the majority is. And the majority of people are quiet. They are not saying anything. They are quiet. Some of them is because they fear that they'll lose their jobs because they're depending on those black corporate companies that are on the black side. Some of them depends on the government. They're getting SASSA on the government side. Some of them are scared that they might lose some of the things that are making them to cope now. So they decide to keep quiet and not say anything. Now, the majority is in the middle. Like I always say, I'm closing my podcast. The power is within us because we are the people that votes. Your vote is private. You go into that box alone. You close that envelope and you put it into the box alone. Nobody knows who you voted for. So the power is in the quietness. So these quiet people who are in the majority, I would say to you today, do not think that you are a minority. You are the majority, the quiet people. And you have the power to change by voting correctly next year in 2024. Let us turn this wheel. Let us stop this thing. It's 2024 next year. They are gunning for 2030. It's 2024. Let's turn this wheel around so that 2030 it's not achieved by Davos, by the World Economic Forum, who our leaders attend every year without fail. Mind you, not everybody is allowed inside. Even the media, they will tell you, the people of the mainstream media, not all the medias are allowed inside at Davos. They end up outside. They don't go inside. The discussions that are happening inside, they do not know. With those words, I'd like to say thank you very much. Until we meet again, let us discuss. Let us talk about these issues. Thank you and goodbye.